Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Um, in the last minute, I added this item to the agenda to update the executive board on the good work carried out by Ifawpca Ambassador to Fidic, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Oliver, we have very few minutes, so please try to run through it as quickly as possible, so that the board has a fair view of the very good work you are doing for the Federation on a pro bono basis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, President. Good afternoon, fellow Ifawpca board members, ladies and gentlemen. Now, today I'm here to report what's the current status of the collaboration between Ifawpca and Fidic. Now, the key ingredient for Fidic's success as the industry standard lies in their balanced approach to the roles and responsibility of the main parties, as well as the allocation and management of risk. For this reason, the fundamental principle behind the Fidic contracts is in use of general condition of contract deemed to be suitable in all cases, based on thousands of successful projects around the world. However, given that no two projects are the same, Fidic does acknowledge the special condition will be required for project-specific issues on a case-by-case basis. We had conducted a brief survey among our members, and here is the result for our reference in order to move forward. The response were rather cold. We had only received 48 responses from our members after a period of 3 weeks upon sending out the questionnaire. However, this formed the basis of our survey, and we would like to share with everyone here today. Now, this slide indicates that we have received response from our members' countries. 12 countries have responded to our survey, which contributed the basis for this report. Melody, next slide, please. Now, among the response, 54% from contractors, 25 from developers, and 20 from the professions. Professionals are such as lawyer, architect, consultant, and QS. Of course, contractors and developers are the user or the contracting parties, which the total of 80% give a more essential feedback, more realistic feedback on the survey. Next, please. Next. Now, 75% of the participants acknowledged that they knew about Fidic. Perhaps it's not in detail. Next. As you may see, that from this slide, only 30% of the participants are using or have used Fidic. As we explained, Fidic form of contracts are used on projects that funded by World Bank, ADB, and some other specific funds, or on projects that international contractors are participating in. Just because Fidic is not widely used, many a time it has been amended heavily when it is in use. That leads us to the next slide. Slide 7, one before. So, much to my surprise, 83% of respondents say it agreed to the amended form. Now, Fidic is branded as a fair, balanced, and well-recognized form of construction and engineering contract and agreement form. Its conditions are based on a fair and balanced risk-reward allocation between the employer and the contractor. Fidic has also observed amendments made to the form, and sometimes substantially, and of such extent that final contract no longer represent the principles, thus jeopardizing the Fidic brand and misleading tenderers and the public. Therefore, Fidic has established its Fidic Golden Principle in 2019. Members are encouraged to understand it more before putting it into use. You may download the Golden Principle from Fidic website, and it's free. The next slide, please. Now, this is another common issue that main contractor facing nowadays. where NSC are having separate terms and conditions with the employer without gaining the prior consent of the main contractor, especially on direct payments for work done. However, results shows majority is in favor of NSC form. Perhaps there are many specialist contractors among the survey. Next one, please. Now, last but not least, disputes are common nowadays, mainly on payments. We always find arbitration is not the best solution. It takes too long, and therefore the survey showed 81% of the participants agreed to explore other ADR for resolving dispute, such as mediation. Now, in short, the danger of accepting unfair or unconscionable terms is one of the biggest risks contractor could have. We know seldom that there is someone there to safeguard our interests when there is unfair outcome from the contracts, other than going legal, of which is the beginning of another long and painful journey. In Malaysia, we have several standard form of contracts, especially for private job. And I believe this applies to the most of the countries. Now, the Fidic Rate Books 2017 is quite applicable to most private jobs, where design is taken care by the employer. For countries without any standard form of contract, it may be worthwhile to make use of the rate book. Now, Ifawpca has entered a MOU with Fidic on 19th of January early this year, with one of the objectives that is to promote and train Fidic form of contracts to our Ifawpca members countries. Best practice principle of fair and balanced risk-reward allocation between the employer and the contractor are the utmost important elements of every project. No party shall take undue advantage of its bargaining power. The contractor and subcontractor are to be paid adequately and timely in accordance with the contract to maintain its cash flow. These are all the required ingredients for a success project. I know it's a bit academic, but it's how it's supposed to be. Member countries whom are keen and would like to explore further to understand more on Fidic or adopting this Fidic form of contracts, we can always request Fidic to give talks and seminars or even training to specific countries or members. However, general talks and seminars are also in the pipeline, which Ifawpca is planning to have a few in next year, especially on the understanding more on golden principle of Fidic, in which I believe is important to our architect and consultant members. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver, for the very good presentation, and I hope member associations would benefit from the work that we are doing with Fidic. We would be, we have agreed to conduct a joint meeting with Fidic. We have been in touch with the CEO of Fidic, and I have come to understand that early next year, in January, we will be able to have a joint Fidic Ifawpca meeting, and we would therefore invite all the member associations to be part of this meeting, so that we can address our concerns and issues to Fidic and try to improve, the contracting challenges that we have in our part of the world as well. The good thing is, the voice of the Asia Pacific region is being heard by Fidic through our federation. So that recognition has been already there through our work in the past 1 or 2 years. Thank you. Thank you, Oliver.
Yeah, you're welcome. One more thing. Actually, I appeal to all the members that we may start to conduct a few more surveys about Fidic. Hopefully, everybody can respond to it, so we have a more deep understanding on each one's needs, so we can form a better plan in order to work towards with Fidic.
Thank you, Mr.
Oliver,
Secretary.
sorry, can I just interject? I think
Sure,
it's
sure.
good to have an idea
Please.
to have a meeting with FIDIC. But I think basically, and that's basically why we have a contracts committee and also a contracts staff like the lawyer who are supposed to be working on this World Bank and ADB, which actually uses also the FIDIC form of contract on multilateral bank, the form of contract lah. So right now, if you really want to help IFOCA, okay, so far FIDIC has been very silent on COVID-19. Okay, and it would help if IFOCA go back and say they issue a proper official guide to declare COVID-19 as a force majeure. They issued, okay, a guideline note, okay, in April last year at the beginning. After that, they went silent. I'm doing a lot of FIDIC contracts, okay, and the consultants are actually saying they are facing great difficulty because FIDIC has not issued clear guidance that the COVID-19 is a pandemic. So it becomes basically a contractual war between employer and contractor. So if they help, then the engineer, which is defined in FIDIC, has an easier life. If not, they will have to take the stand, okay, of the employer. Right? So, I mean, feedback is one thing, but since we have a ambassador to FIDIC, right, I think basically, right, if you see, you just run through their guidelines, okay, right, they have not issued any updated guideline on COVID-19. I've been tracking it. Okay, so something clear to declare is force majeure. Okay, but they have yet to declare. So at the end of the day, if they don't declare, then basically you cannot say that you're fair. Right, so put it this way, unless you're using it, then you actually know all the innuendos. And the NSC form of contract in FIDIC is not very good for contractors. It is not back-to-back. So which means that basically, if the owner don't pay you, you cannot say you don't pay him. Be very, very careful if you start to promote FIDIC form of NSC. I'm using it and I'm struggling. Okay, so before we say the FIDIC NSC form of contract is very fair, it is fair to the subcontractor of the main contractor. But the main contractor is caught in the middle. And you tell me, we are all contractors here. How many of you want to be in the middle where you cannot apply the back-to-back principle? That is the reality of life. So I think before we start to promote NSC, FIDIC and all that, basically these are the problems. So I would think that those who are familiar, better feedback to Oliver, all of these key points.
Yeah.
And then lastly, FIDIC guidebooks, okay, there are plenty. Even the European Contractors Association, they have something like Okaji, right? They all mention FIDIC, and guess what? They only mention SICA there. SICA guidelines. There's nothing from IFOCA. So apparently, right, basically, we have not been lobbying a lot, basically, on FIDIC through IFOCA. So there are a lot of books out down there that actually give actually credence to SICA, although I don't think they do so much because SICA mainly is pushed by the European contractors. It will be nice if basically, because SICA has actually published some guideline notes. We have not done so. Okay, so maybe this is an area, okay? But this, I mean, because I run through all these documents and all that, so I notice SICA has got mentioned, but not IFOCA. So really, if you want to be treated with respect by FIDIC, okay, right, the only way to be treated is basically you take them on contractually. Basically, having breakfast and all that doesn't give credibility to IFOCA. Of course, they prefer it this way, it means because we have no dispute with them. But at some point in time, IFOCA is to protect contractors. So if the conditions of contract are basically not conducive to contractors, then it's our duty to go and tell them change or convince them to change. That's just my comments. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Desmond. I think
take note. I take note.
Yeah. I think Desmond has forgotten that we have signed an agreement with FIDIC, that we have already entered into a very strong MOU, that they consult us, that we have appointed an ambassador, that the FIDIC management is willing to sit with us in meetings. And this is something that has not been done by Ifawpca all these years. So I initiated this, and we have made very good progress. And I think Sika has been in touch with them over many, many years from the very beginning. So I guess the progress we are making so far under my leadership is good, I would say. And Oliver is also doing a very good job. So I think the issues raised by you and the recognition issue would be resolved very soon. Thank you. Mr. Secretary General, you can move to the next item, agenda item, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's about it. We have covered it all. Mr. Oliver, thank you very much for your detailed explanation. I felt like it was a news brief, very precise, you know, and very good with the illustrations too.
Desmond, just one more thing. Further to our discussion in the last meeting and the issue that you just raised about FIDIC not recognizing the pandemic, I personally spoke with the CEO of FIDIC, and I also very strongly contested this issue, and that is why we requested a meeting with Ifawpca and FIDIC with the highest level. So I am hopeful that some of the experts in the Singapore Association, as well as other associations, specialists in the FIDIC contracts, would be able to join this meeting and present our case so that serious considerations can happen. And thank you very much for Desmond for being on top of it. That helps us to be, you know, a bit you know, stronger in our position to get things done in our way. Thank you.